YCS Orlando is coming soon, about 2 to 3 weeks from now. I'll be going. If you're going, say hello, please. I love it. But that being said, we're going to do a quick tier list for the meta post-SUDA for YCS Orlando specifically. And probably the meta after Orlando will shift because people will see what the topping results are and they'll kind of make choices based on that. And as we see the format progress, we're going to see a few shifts. But for Orlando specifically, I want to do a tier list because I want to know what I need to prepare for, what I need to build my deck for, and kind of go through a lot of the options. All right, so we're going to do a tier list here. We're going to start off with our tiers. We have the best, which is obviously the best decks. We have strong option. We have just a weaker variant. This is an interesting tier because if you look down at our options, we have like a bunch of Ryzeals, a bunch of Mitsurugis, a bunch of Malices, a bunch of Tenpais, like Fiendsmith. Like, you can't chuck them all in the best, right? So I think that there are ideal variants, and I think that there are just weaker ones. So we're going to have a tier just for that. Then we're going to have relatively rogue. There's a lot of interesting options, and just because I put a deck, I just didn't do a quick disclaimer, just because I put a deck down in this relatively rogue section, I fully admit that I will probably, like, I could lose to this deck at the YCS, right? Like, this deck is no slouch, but it's not Ryzeal or Malice, right? So, relatively rogue is like, it's good enough to be played at a YCS, it's just probably not going to see the same results as some of the best decks or strong options. And then we have one section for not great or not yet. There's a couple decks in here that I want to place in this tier, and also there's a deck in here that is not released yet. Even though it's on this list, I do want to talk about it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the elephant in the room. We have Ryzeal. Okay, so the three options on this tier list particularly are Pure Ryzeal, Ryzeal Fiendsmith, and Ryzeal Bystial Fiendsmith. I think the best variant is with Bystial Fiendsmith. I just don't see how you're not playing Bystials in your deck right now with every deck on Fiendsmith, right? But yeah, it kind of depends. Like, what do you define as Bystials? Like, are you playing like a full Lubellion package, or are you just playing like a Magnemite and a Druid Worm? Like, it's just so wishy-washy between these actual options that I'm not going to be too concerned about it. The Pure Ryzeal deck, like, after SUDA, we have Twins of the Eclipse, but like every Ryzeal variant has Twins of the Eclipse. So I think Pure is just a weaker variant. Like, I don't know how you're only playing the Pure version. And then we have like the version with Fiendsmith without Bystial. I don't know. It's just so these decks are the same deck to me. So I don't know why they're both in this tier list necessarily, but yeah, I'm gonna put them both up here in the best. The next one, though, is Mitsurugi Ryzeal. I am intrigued by this deck. I think that on release of SUDA, this deck will be top tier at the local and regional level. But at a YCS level, I think it's just a strong option. The reason is that in a long tournament like a YCS, drawing your brick ritual cards and bricking hands is going to happen just more times in more rounds, and you're just going to lose rounds because of bricking. And I don't know if this deck is consistent enough. Like, I don't know how many times you're going to lose to yourself. I think as a going first deck, this might be the best one. But as like, that's the other problem. Going second, this deck is kind of weak, right? You're playing all these ritual engine cards that just don't help you break boards unless you start playing. So I don't think that this is in the best tier. I think it's a strong option, and I'm interested to see what it will do. And this is kind of weird too, like with these tiers, because I have strong option and then we have just a weaker variant. I think Pure Ryzeal is just as good as Mitsurugi Ryzeal, but like, yeah, I think the Pure one belongs in this description, right? Anyway, moving on, we have Mitsurugi Ogdoadic, I believe this is. We're gonna put this down in relatively rogue. I don't think that the Ogdoadic engine is gonna be good enough compared to Ryzeal or whatever. Like, why would you play this? I guess you could just put it in here, just a weaker variant. It's weaker than this Ryzeal variant. Same with the Fiendsmith version. I think one of the strong suits of the Mitsurugi Ryzeal is obviously Ryzeal's access to King of the Feral Imps. If you're playing Mitsurugi Fiendsmith like without Ryzeal, then it loses a lot of consistency. Like, I don't know why you would play without Ryzeal if you're gonna play paired with something else. So yeah, that's where I'm gonna put these. Okay, let's move on to Malice now. We have on this tier list options, we have kind of a pure version, we have Bystials, we have Fiendsmith, we have Striker. Okay, I don't know what a pure version of Malice is, like without Bystials, and with, like, I don't know what that is. So I'm just gonna put it down here. I don't know what that is. Okay, now the Bystial version, I think the Bystials are like insane in this deck. Like, they're both non-engine and engine at the same time. So I'm gonna put it up here in the best. I think this is the other best deck. Yeah, so I'm gonna put it there. The Fiendsmith Malice is also here, but like, I don't know, the nuances between the Bystial Malice and the Fiendsmith Malice, like, I don't know which one's better. Like, slightly edges out the other one. Like, how can I put a Fiendsmith version down in strong option when the Bystial's in the best? I don't know. I'll just put it up here. And then the Striker version. Okay, so the Striker version I do actually have relevant comments about. The Striker version is very good right now, but after SUDA, it's kind of like ass. Okay, and the reason is that the Striker version is built to break the Ryzeal board, and right now you just do that with obviously board breakers and spell cards, but because it twins the Eclipse, you have to now break Detonator twice. So that is gonna burn your hand, dude. And I don't know, the Ryzeal deck becomes much more resilient to this version, and I'm gonna put it down here, not great or not yet. I think the Striker version is just that much worse. Okay, now this Tenpai Bystial Fiendsmith deck, I think, is here in strong option. I don't think it's as good as the Ryzeal's deck or the Malice deck, but I am scared of this deck. I don't want to play against it, and Tenpai still gives me PTSD, right? So we're gonna put it here. Now I have like a pure Tenpai version. This one is not pure, it's Tenpai Striker, which is very good right now, but it suffers from the same problem as the Malice version, is that the Striker cards lose a lot of value because it twins the Eclipse. So I'm going to put the Striker Tenpai down here. Alright, next is going to be Crystron. Not sure how I'm going to feel about this. I think I want to put it in relatively rogue, and I don't want to sell it short. I think Crystron's a very good deck, but I just don't think it stands up to Ryzeal, Malice, or the Tenpai Fiendsmith deck. Like, it's just not quite there. It's not quite there. Okay, so I'm going to put it in relatively rogue. Fiendsmith Musketeers, and then we also have Fiendsmith Kashtira. Like, any deck with Fiendsmith is solid. It's like by default solid. But I'm going to put these both in relatively rogue as well. Or, like, you could argue to put them here. Like, why would you play Fiendsmith Musket when you could play Fiendsmith Ryzeal? Right? Like, why would I normal summon Starfire when I could normal summon Ice Ryzeal? It's kind of sus. So, I think I'm gonna put him here, just a weaker variant. It's just weaker than Ryzeal Fiendsmith, and that's where it's at. Bystial Fiendsmith is the same thing. It's just Bystials plus Fiendsmith without a normal summon. Like, what is this normal summon? Like, maybe Black Metal Dragon? I think it's just a weaker variant than the Ryzeal, the one that plays Ryzeal cards. Okay, now we have all these other fun decks. Mermail, we're going to put down in relatively rogue. There's very few Mermail players that are going to be playing... well, like, very few players that are going to be playing Mermail in the first place. when we have Ryzeal, Malice, Fiendsmith, everything around. And like, even if you do, this is one of the hardest decks to play, and to play it well for like 19 rounds is absolutely bonkers, right? So yeah, we're gonna put this down in relatively rogue. I don't think at YCS Orlando is gonna see more success. Memento, I'm gonna consistently rank this deck high, even though it doesn't get results. I do this every tier list. I think Memento is fantastic. It's like one of the only decks that can stand up to these other guys, but nobody plays it, right? It almost makes me want to play it. I don't know, but I think Memento is cool. I think Memento is great, and I think it's got a strong chance at competing. Okay, so this one is the Primite Blue Eyes deck. This is going in not yet, and not because it's not good. I think it probably will be good, but the Blue Eyes cards are not out yet. This is for Orlando. That's why it's down here. Don't yell at me in the comments, or yell at me in the comments and then make fool of yourself. Okay, Voiceless, relatively rogue. The last time I did a tier list, I didn't really respect this deck, but I've seen Voiceless like getting results. Okay. Sorry I did not recognize your game, right? But still, no, I don't think so. Yubel. This is another place I was wrong in the last tier list. I thought this would be like tier 1, but nobody is playing Yubel. So I'm going to put it in relatively rogue as well. I wish it was a strong option. I kind of like it as an option, but nobody's playing this deck, right? Okay, Lab. Lab is another place where on my previous tier list I took a lot of heat. I put it in rogue. Still rogue. I will admit I was wrong. Like, I thought it would get like no tops, but it won like a regional or two. Okay, I was wrong on that. Like, I did not see that coming. But are you really putting Lab up with these other decks in the best section or in the strong option section? I'm not. They're not Malice, they're not Ryzeal, they're not Mitsurugi, they're not this Tenpai Fiendsmith, they're not Memento. Right? I don't think Lab is as good as those 5 decks, and therefore, it's gotta go in the rogue section. Okay? White Forest. White Forest gets the new card in Suda. The, what's it called? Azamina LZ, or whatever it is. Deck's just not good enough. It can't go second. Like, it can't break a detonator. Right? So we have to put it here, unfortunately. Same with Rescue Ace. I think it's just not great or not yet. It did win a regional or 2 maybe, which is pretty cool, but I don't see it going second into these decks. Let's skip to the Goblin Bikers. I don't know where Goblin Bikers is at. I haven't seen it played really. I know it's supposed to be good into Ryzeal. I guess I'll put it in Rogue. Like, I think because Ryzeal will be the most popular deck at the YCS, therefore we have to at least put Goblin Biker, its counter, into Rogue. So that's interesting. It's an interesting tech. And then we end up with Plunder Patrol, which is the best deck because this is Phantom's YGO channel, and therefore I have to put Plunder at the top. And every tier list video, someone asks, hey, what about Plunder? You know where Plunder is, dude. It's in the best. It's the top, the cream of the crop. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what you think of this tier list. I know it's kind of a little funky. Like, there's a lot of the same options, essentially. But let me know what you think. Where would you move stuff around? Let me know in the comments. Leave a like. Sub to the channel if you want to. That would be awesome. It's free. It's free to sub. Please do so. We'll see you later.